Imagine spending over $4 million on one of the biggest product launches in history, only to watch millions of your own customers turn against you. Not because your factories failed, not because a competitor invented something revolutionary, but because you changed the taste of the world's most recognizable drink. In 1985, Coca-Cola wasn't a struggling company. It was one of the most powerful brands on Earth. Its logo was recognized across the globe. Its products were sold in more than 150 countries. Annual revenue exceeded $7 billion, and the company dominated the soft drink industry. Yet, inside Coca-Cola's headquarters, executives believed something terrifying was happening. For decades, the company had fought a bitter battle with Pepsi, a rivalry worth billions of dollars. And by the early 1980s, Pepsi had found a weapon that seemed impossible to defeat: the Pepsi Challenge. Across America, shoppers participated in blind taste tests. Without seeing the labels, many people chose Pepsi. Its sweeter formula often won quick first impressions. Television commercials repeated the results over and over. Consumers began asking an uncomfortable question: was Pepsi actually better? Inside Coca-Cola, executives feared something far bigger than losing a few taste tests. If younger generations switched brands permanently, decades of market leadership could disappear. The company launched one of the largest consumer research projects in its history. More than 190,000 blind taste tests were conducted. Again and again, a sweeter Coca-Cola formula performed better than the original. The data looked overwhelming. To management, the numbers seemed undeniable. Consumers preferred the new formula. So, executives reached a decision that would shock the business world. Instead of introducing a second product, they would replace the original Coca-Cola entirely. No backup, no safety net. The drink that had existed for nearly 100 years would disappear. On April 23, 1985, Coca-Cola officially introduced New Coke. The launch was massive. Press conferences, television coverage, national advertising. Executives celebrated what they believed was the future of the brand. For a brief moment, everything looked successful. Then the phone started ringing. Thousands of angry customers called Coca-Cola every single day. Some cried, some demanded the original recipe back. Others accused the company of destroying an American icon. Soon, the complaints reached tens of thousands of calls and letters. Protest groups appeared. People bought remaining bottles of the old formula and stored them in basements. Newspapers covered the backlash almost daily. The issue was no longer about taste. It had become emotional. Consumers weren't simply drinking Coca-Cola. They believed they owned a small piece of its history, and Coca-Cola had taken that away. Even worse, Pepsi celebrated publicly. Its executives declared victory in what they called the Cola Wars. For the first time in decades, Coca-Cola looked vulnerable. Investor confidence wavered. Retailers faced confused customers. The world's strongest beverage brand suddenly looked like it no longer understood its own audience. The research hadn't been completely wrong. Many people actually preferred the sweeter taste during short blind tests. But the company had misunderstood something impossible to measure with numbers alone. People weren't buying only flavor. They were buying memories, tradition, identity, a century of emotional connection. The spreadsheets measured taste, but they couldn't measure loyalty. As public pressure intensified, Coca-Cola's leadership faced an impossible choice. Should they defend the decision or admit one of the biggest branding mistakes in corporate history? Every passing day increased the damage. The longer they waited, the greater the risk that customers would abandon the company forever. Then, less than 3 months after launching New Coke, Coca-Cola made another historic announcement. The original formula would return as Coca-Cola Classic. It was one of the fastest and most dramatic reversals ever made by a global consumer brand. Many expected the company to suffer permanent damage. Instead, the return of the original product reignited public enthusiasm. Sales recovered, Coca-Cola strengthened its emotional connection with consumers, and the brand eventually regained momentum in the cola market. The new Coke formula remained on the market for years under different branding before eventually disappearing. Today, business schools still study the new Coke story, not because it was simply a product failure, but because it exposed one of the most expensive mistakes companies can make, believing that customer data tells the entire story. Because in business, numbers can explain what people choose, but they don't always explain why people care. And sometimes, one bold decision can put an entire empire at risk overnight.